everyone. Welcome to the Union Pacific Railroad Evanston subdivision in HO scale. My name is Daryl Cruz, owner and builder of the layout, and your host for episode 37 of season 2023. This is a weekly update that will show what the finished product is going to look like on much of the upper level. The upper level is about 186 feet in length, and it mostly is 10 inches wide, as you can see here. There are a few places where it gets a little bit wider. At Westvaco, for instance, there's a plant there for some operations, and then also at Granger and the Aspen tunnels and so forth. But for the most part, it's 10 inches wide, and it's going to look like what you're going to see today as far as the finished product for the upper level. Now, one thing you can see that I did here is add some ballast. This is Woodland Scenics ballast. Still need a little bit of touch up to do on parts of it. It wasn't completely dry yet when I took this video, but I used Woodland Scenics fine gray ballast, which matches the UP in Wyoming and Utah on the Evanston subdivision, both in the color and in the size of the grains. On this particular portion of the Evanston sub, there is the concrete ties along with some regular wood ties. Union Pacific experimented with concrete ties on the Evanston sub, so we have that represented here. Now, this is kind of the view that you're going to be getting at eye level, so you don't really get a chance to look straight down at it unless you're standing on a step stool. I do have step stools around the layout, so if people do want to get a better look at the upper level, they can. But basically, this is the view that you get, at least eye level for me. As you can see, there are some seams that I need to do. I did put in some telephone poles also. There you can see the signals and a telephone pole in the background. Again, this is eye level, so I went as far as you can actually see at eye level. So sometimes you'll see the wood coming at the top of the helix portion there, but from eye level you can't see there. Here you can see I put some telephone poles in. These are by Rick's Products, and they look pretty realistic. They were a little bit darker brown, so I painted them a lighter brown so that they look more realistic. These are actually a kit. You have to glue the cross arms to the poles, which is a little kind of tedious, but they're a lot less expensive than the Atlas or other telephone poles that I could see. Now, you notice I went all the way. There's one way back there in the dark, so I went all the way into the back so that it looks like the telephone poles continue indefinitely. And I did that just so that we had telephone poles all the way through, and then also because I was going to put some telephone lines in, and I didn't want there to be a spot where you could see where the lines end. Have a little touch up to do on the fascia there on the blue, as you can see. I am going to keep the blue, by the way, I think. All right, so here's a tree that I was going to use to hide a seam. I was going to hide this seam right here. Now, did some adjusting of it. First thing I did is I took the top off, because when you first saw it was a little bit too high, or higher than it really needed to be. So I took the top off to kind of flatten it out. And then I removed half the tree. Now, I was trying to decide whether I should put trees or telephone poles to hide some of the seams in the backdrop, and I figured it'd be good to try to do both. So here's a second tree. So I decided I'm going to take these trees and I'm going to cut half of them off, or half of it off. Okay, here you can see the difference. I just tore off half of it so that the trees would go right up against the backdrop, and then that would hopefully leave some room for the telephone wires. And now you can see I actually glued the top of the tree to the backdrop to make sure that they stayed up against the backdrop and did not interfere with the wires. Now there's some gaps in the trees since I took a lot of the foliage off. So here's the leftover foliage that I had taken off, and there you can see some of the the gaps that are missing. So I took that leftover piece and I just stuck them back in the trees. And so here we have a couple of trees that do a really good job of hiding the seam. And also leaves or left room for the telephone wires. So instead of trying to decide between telephone poles or trees, I decided to use both. The telephones by themselves would not be enough. Here's a second seam that I did with just one tree. But anyway, it turned out I didn't think the telephone poles would hide the seams by themselves. They're just too skinny and so forth. But I thought I might as well try and do both. All right, so here I use some Easy line. That's a name of a type of elastic line that you can get. Just Google Easy line, and I use that to put telephone lines on the telephone poles. I also looked on Google Earth and found some satellite photos of the telephone poles, and for what I could see, they're about 160 or so, 150, 160 feet apart from each other. I did decide to go with 2 feet, which comes out to 174 or 176 feet between. But I wanted to use 2 feet so I could make sure that I always missed the seam. I didn't want the telephone poles to ever land on a seam, and these posters are 8 feet in length, so I decided to go with 2 feet so that they would always be a foot on each side of the seam, and then the lines would miss the tree as much as possible. I put 5 wires in. Here's the rest of them that I have to do yet. So I got 16 feet done. I have probably double that to do yet to finish all the way to Westvaco. But kind of get an idea how this looks. So this basically is going to be, even though there will be, I need to touch up the ballast a little bit and the fascia and so forth. There's some touch up to do, but for the most part, this is what the upper level is going to look like. A backdrop, double track main line, signals where needed, ballasted track, and then, basic ground foam, scenery, some static grass, foliage, telephone poles, and a few trees here and there. So I'm going to try and minimize the number of trees. Basically, make sure I get the seams, and I'll probably put a couple of extra trees in there so it doesn't look so regular that every 8 feet there's a tree. So I'll probably put some smaller ones in between, so to kind of break it up a little bit. But this is basically how it's going to look, and I'm actually pretty happy with it. I think it's definitely what I was shooting for, and it definitely makes the upper level look good. Even if you're looking just at eye level, which is what you're looking at here, is the eye level, or if you're standing on a footstool and looking down on it, in both cases it's going to look pretty good. This is an ethanol train being pulled by a couple of Athearns. The first one's a Gevo. Second one is I think it's a SD75, a former BNSF that's now a leasing unit, or a locomotive owned by a leasing company. So the upper level basically gives 186 feet of additional running length, a couple of extra places for operations at Granger and at Westvaco. Definitely a lot of operation at Westvaco. And then there will be some a bigger scenery at the Aspen tunnels where it widens up a little bit, but it's turned out pretty good. I'm going to try and do the rest of the way like this towards Westvaco, and then I'll be able to begin work on the lower level. thanks so much for watching. This is kind of a short video. Um, I look forward to more this week, and then also in the upcoming weeks as I do an update throughout the year as we continue to work on the Union Pacific Railroad Evanston subdivision. Have a great Sunday, everyone. Take care.